Xavier Knox hadn't meant to spill orange juice on his shirt, but when your 5-year-old daughter is swinging her lunchbox like a medieval weapon in the school parking lot, accidents happen. "Dad, you look like a sunburst," Penny giggled from the passenger seat. He glanced down at the splatter across his chest and sighed. "Well, sunshine, I guess I'm the bright spot in someone's day." "You're embarrassing," she said, but laughed anyway. They pulled into the school pickup line, his beat-up sedan wheezing as he hit the brakes. The air conditioner made its usual protesting squeal, and Xavier rolled down the window just as a sleek black SUV pulled in beside them. Penny gasped. "Dad, look at that car, it looks like it could fly." "I bet it's got a coffee machine inside," he muttered, eyeing the shiny rims before adjusting the mirror with 2 fingers, hoping it wouldn't fall off again. A woman stepped out of the SUV, tall and graceful in jeans and a crisp white blouse. She was fussing with her sunglasses when Penny rolled down her window and shouted, "Hi, your car is awesome." The woman turned, surprised, and then smiled. "Thank you, I think it's a little dramatic." Xavier leaned over. "Sorry about her." "She tends to speak her mind." "I like that," the woman said, walking closer. "I'm Lila Fairley. My niece just started here. I'm picking her up today." "Xavier, this is Penny. 5 years going on 15. Lila laughed, her voice smooth and warm. "I can see that." They stood there for a moment, the awkward silence stretching between them until Penny piped up again. "You smell like cookies," she told Lila. "I was baking this morning," Lila said, leaning down. "Chocolate chip, want one?" Penny's eyes lit up. "Yes, please," Xavier hesitated. "You don't have to," but Lila was already at her car, pulling out a small Tupperware container. She handed one to Penny, then offered one to Xavier. He took it slowly. "Thanks, and thanks for not treating me like a weirdo with juice on his shirt," she smiled. "I've seen worse on school pickup lines." Over the next week, their paths kept crossing. Monday, it was at the kindergarten gate. Wednesday, Lila helped Penny find her lost pencil pouch. Friday, Xavier offered to hold her coffee while she adjusted her niece's backpack. "I feel like we're in some kind of pickup club," Xavier joked one afternoon as the kids ran ahead to the playground. Lila laughed. "The elite society of exhausted adults who function on caffeine and chaos." They sat on a bench under the trees, watching Penny push Lila's niece down the slide. "You always pick her up?" Lila asked. "Yeah, I work nights, so I'm free during the day. My job's not glamorous," she tilted her head. "What do you do?" "Dishwasher at a hotel downtown. It pays the bills, barely." There was no pity in her face, just quiet understanding. "That's honest work." He looked down at his scuffed work boots. "Yeah, well, trying to give Penny what she deserves." "You seem like a great dad," she said softly. Xavier didn't know what to say to that. Compliments always made him nervous, especially from women like her, polished, confident, with the kind of calm that suggested she hadn't worried about a bill in years. Still, he liked talking to her. Something about Lila made him forget the constant weight on his shoulders. That weekend, she surprised him. "Hey," she said after school on Friday, "I'm throwing a small birthday dinner for my niece. You and Penny should come." "Oh, I don't know, we wouldn't want to crash." "You're not crashing. Penny's her only friend here so far. It's just pizza and cake." "Nothing fancy." Xavier hesitated. He had no gift, no fancy clothes, nothing to offer. Lila seemed to read it on his face. "Please, it would mean a lot." He gave in. Saturday evening, he dressed Penny in her best dress and brushed her curls 3 times. He wore his cleanest jeans and a button-up shirt that still had an ironed crease from last Easter. But when they pulled up to the address Lila had given him, Xavier's stomach dropped. The house wasn't just nice, it was a mansion. "Dad," Penny whispered. "Are we at the right place?" He double-checked the address. "Yeah, I think we are." The driveway was lined with lanterns. There was a fountain, a real fountain, and standing on the porch, holding a tray of cupcakes, was Lila. She looked radiant, like she belonged in a movie. Her hair was swept back, her dress crisp and elegant. Xavier's throat tightened. "You live here," Lila blinked. "Oh, I thought you knew." No, I didn't." She stepped forward. "Please don't make this weird. I invited you because I wanted you here." "Both of you?" He looked around, clearly out of place among the luxury cars and manicured hedges. "I'm just a dishwasher," he said quietly. "You're also a great dad, and someone I like being around." Penny tugged his hand. "Dad, can we go in?" Xavier stared at Lila for a long second. Then he nodded. Inside, the house smelled like vanilla and fresh flowers. The kitchen was bigger than their entire apartment. Penny ran off with the other kids, and Lila led him to the patio where music played softly. "Don't take this the wrong way," he said, watching the lights twinkle above them, "but you don't exactly scream everyday school pickup." She laughed. "I guess I've gotten good at blending in." "You're rich," he said, not asking. She nodded. "Technically, yes. My parents started a real estate business. I run it now." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Why didn't you say anything? You didn't ask, and I didn't want that to be the first thing you knew about me." They stood there, the air thick between them, until Lila said, "I like you, Xavier. Whether you make $10 an hour or 100,000. He looked at her, eyes searching. "This feels complicated." "It doesn't have to be." Penny ran over just then, frosting on her nose. "Dad, this is the best party ever." He smiled down at her, then looked back at Lila. "I'm not used to this," he said. "Me neither," she replied. "But maybe we try anyway." Xavier looked at the woman standing in front of him. Millionaire, yes, but also kind, funny, and real, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something more. He gave a slow nod. "Okay. Let's try." Monday brought a jolt of cold air and a flat tire. Xavier crouched beside his car in the school parking lot, his knuckles scraped raw from trying to loosen the lug nuts with a rusted wrench. Penny sat inside, reading a comic book with her feet on the dashboard. "Come on, you piece of." He slammed the wrench down, the sound echoing across the nearly empty lot. A gentle voice interrupted him. "Need help?" Lila stood a few feet away, holding 2 paper cups, her coat wrapped tightly around her. Her hair was pulled into a loose braid, and the wind caught a few strands, brushing them across her cheek. He stood and wiped his hands on his jeans, trying not to look as frustrated as he felt. "I've got it. Just fighting with the universe." She held out one of the cups. "Well, while you fight, have some cinnamon chai. I figured you weren't a pumpkin spice guy." He took the cup, surprised. "Thanks, how'd you know I like cinnamon?" "I didn't," she said. "I guessed. Glad I got lucky." Xavier took a sip. It was exactly right. "I can call someone to come swap the tire," she offered. "I appreciate it, but I've got a spare. Just need to convince this wrench to cooperate." She crouched beside him and studied the bolt. "My dad used to make me change my own tires. Said no daughter of his would ever be stranded." He raised an eyebrow. "That's unexpected." She grinned. He was a contradiction, made his fortune flipping houses but never stopped using coupons, wouldn't let us hire a cleaning service but drove a Bentley. Xavier chuckled. "Sounds like a character." He was, still is, lives on a vineyard in Argentina now. "You close. Closer now than when I was a teenager. Back then I thought he cared more about his properties than about us." Xavier nodded slowly. "I know that feeling. My old man left before I turned 11. Never sent a card. I used to tell people he was an astronaut, figured it sounded better than deadbeat. They were quiet for a beat, the wind brushing past them. Did you ever want to find him?" she asked. "I used to. Then I realized I didn't need him to become the kind of man I wanted to be." He glanced toward Penny, who was now singing to her comic book. "She's my reason to keep going, even when everything else feels like it's falling apart." Lila followed his gaze. "She's lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one." She stood and dusted off her knees. "How about dinner?" "My treat. You look like you could use a break that doesn't involve car tools." He glanced at his grease-stained hands. "I'm not exactly dressed for dining out." "I didn't say we had to go out." "I can cook." Xavier blinked. I'm not completely hopeless in the kitchen," she said. "I even make a decent lasagna. You're full of surprises." "I hope that's a good thing." He hesitated. "I'd need to bring Penny. I don't have anyone to watch her." "Of course. She's half the reason I'm asking." Later that evening, they arrived at Lila's home again, but this time he didn't hesitate at the door. Penny ran ahead, carrying a sketchbook she wanted to show her new friend, and Xavier followed slowly, the scent of roasted garlic already creeping through the hallway. Inside the kitchen, Lila stood at the stove, wearing a faded apron that said Queen of Casseroles. The countertops were cluttered with fresh herbs, grated cheese, and a bottle of red wine. "You weren't kidding," Xavier said. "This is serious cooking." She smiled over her shoulder. "You think I'd let you eat boxed pasta on my watch?" He sat at the island, watching her move confidently between the sauce and the oven. "Do you ever slow down?" he asked. She poured him a glass of wine and set it in front of him. I used to think if I slowed down, everything would fall apart. My family's company, my image, my sanity. But now, I'm learning to breathe. He took a sip. It was smoother than anything he'd ever bought himself. I don't think I've had wine this good since college, and that was from a box, she laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. They ate by the fireplace in the living room while Penny and Lila's niece built a pillow fort nearby. The lasagna was rich and cheesy, and Xavier found himself reaching for seconds without thinking. You know, he said, I never thought I'd find myself here. Where, sitting in a mansion, eating homemade food with a woman who owns half the city. I don't own half the city. I Googled you, he said. After the party, you're on the board of 3 charities. Your company's worth over $200 million. She didn't flinch. I figured you might look me up eventually, he studied her. Why hide it? It's not who I am. Not really. Money doesn't define me. It just complicates things. Yeah, I get that now. Does it bother you? She asked. He paused. No, but it scares me. She leaned back. Why? Because this, you and me, it feels like something that could matter, and I'm not sure I belong in your world. I'm not asking you to belong in a world. I'm asking you to be in mine. He looked at her, the firelight casting soft shadows across her face. That's the same thing. Before she could answer, Penny bounced over and climbed into his lap. Dad, can we come back next weekend? Xavier wrapped his arm around her. We'll see, Peanut, Lila smiled. You're both welcome anytime. As they drove home, Penny snored softly in the backseat, her head resting on her sketchbook. Xavier kept one hand on the wheel, the other curled around the warmth of Lila's to-go dish resting in the passenger seat. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he was surviving. He felt like he was beginning. The invitation arrived on a Thursday afternoon, tucked inside Penny's school folder alongside a finger-painted owl and a note about missing Jim's shoes. Xavier unfolded the creamy cardstock, brow furrowing at the gold lettering. Lila Fairley cordially invites you to the Fairley Foundation Autumn Gala. He stared at it for a long time, the weight of the paper feeling heavier than it should. On the back, in Lila's handwriting, were 6 words, I'd really like you to come. That night, while Penny drew superheroes on the living room floor, Xavier sat at the kitchen table, the invitation still in his hands. He had no tux, no idea how to navigate a black tie event, and no clue why this woman, this brilliant, intimidating, untouchably elegant woman wanted him there. The next day, he waited until the crowd thinned at pickup before approaching her. Lila was leaning against her SUV, sunglasses perched on her head, scrolling through her phone. I got your invitation, he said. She tucked the phone away and looked up. I wasn't sure if you'd say anything. I didn't know galas were in my future. I didn't either, she replied, but I want you there. What exactly happens at something like that? I've never been to a party where the invitation weighed more than my wallet. There's dinner, speeches, a silent auction, a lot of handshaking and pretending to understand wine pairings. He crossed his arms. And you want me to walk into that? I want you next to me. He studied her, trying to figure out what she wasn't saying. Why? Because I'm tired of showing up alone, because I want people to know you matter to me. You realize I'll stick out, he said. I don't own anything remotely considered formal. I can't talk about hedge funds or yacht maintenance. She stepped closer, the air suddenly tense. I don't care if you wear a borrowed jacket and talk about dish soap for an hour. I'm not looking for someone to impress my board of donors. I just want you there. He hesitated, then asked, what about Penny? My niece's sitter is staying at the house that night. Penny's welcome to stay too. She'll have fun. He exhaled slowly. I'll think about it. That Saturday, Xavier stood in front of a mirror inside a small downtown rental shop, adjusting the sleeves of a black suit that didn't quite fit his shoulders. The clerk eyed him critically and pinned the cuffs with a practiced hand. You're lucky, the man said. Last-minute rentals usually look like funeral leftovers. Xavier didn't respond. He couldn't stop thinking about how Lila would look in a dress meant for champagne and chandeliers. He couldn't imagine walking beside her without feeling like a misplaced extra in a movie he didn't audition for. When he arrived at the Fairley estate that evening, Penny was already running through the halls with Lila's niece, both of them wearing matching pajamas. He kissed her forehead and told her to be good, then turned toward the front staircase. Lila stood at the top in a silver gown that shimmered like starlight. Her hair was swept back, revealing a pair of delicate diamond earrings. When she saw him, her face softened. "I was starting to think you wouldn't come." "I almost didn't," he admitted. "But Penny told me I looked like a prince, and I figured that was reason enough." She descended the stairs slowly, stopping in front of him. "You clean up well, and you look like trouble," she laughed, slipping her arm through his. "Come on, I'll protect you." The gala was held in the ballroom of a historic hotel downtown. Crystal chandeliers glittered above them, and a string quartet played near the grand staircase. Waiters moved between gold-covered tables, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvres Xavier couldn't pronounce. He kept his hand at the small of Lila's back, grounding himself with the one thing in the room that felt real. "You okay?" she asked during a lull between introductions. "Not sure if I'm supposed to be holding this fork like a pencil or a weapon." She leaned close. "Just eat." "No one's grading you." But people noticed. They always noticed. The man in the rental suit beside Lila Fairley. The whispers weren't cruel, just curious, with that brand of polished politeness that made Xavier want to disappear into the wallpaper. At the auction table, Lila placed a bid on a photography package for the school. Xavier glanced at the clipboards, the starting prices making his stomach twist. "This is normal for you," she shrugged. "It's part of my world." "But it's not the part I care about." Later, during a speech from a local senator, Xavier leaned over and whispered, "Tell me again why you wanted me here." Lila turned, her face serious now. "Because I've never had someone in my life who didn't care about any of this." "You're not with me because of my name or my money. You're with me in spite of it." He stared at her, unsure how to respond. "I didn't invite you to impress anyone," she went on. "I invited you because you're the first person who's made me feel like I can breathe." After dessert, she led him to a balcony that overlooked the city skyline. The music filtered out softly through the open doors, and the cool air offered a welcome escape from the noise. Xavier leaned on the railing. "This isn't my world. I keep thinking someone's going to hand me a tray and ask me to refill drinks." "Would you?" she teased. "If the tips are good." She laughed, then turned serious. "I know this isn't easy for you. But I just want us to keep trying." He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the millionaire or the polished host or the woman in the magazine article he'd read last week. He saw the person who'd offered him a cookie without hesitation. The person who'd made lasagna from scratch without bragging about it. The woman who'd sat beside him on a school bench and never once made him feel small. "I don't know where this is going," he said, "but I'm not ready to let it go." She stepped closer. "Neither am I." He kissed her then, right there on the balcony, the city lights flickering behind them like a curtain of stars. For the first time in his life, Xavier didn't feel like he was borrowing someone else's world. He felt like he belonged in hers. Xavier stood outside the bakery at the corner of 5th and Monroe, watching Penny through the window as she pointed excitedly at a tray of strawberry tarts. Inside, Lila crouched next to her, listening intently, her expression open and unguarded. He'd never seen someone so comfortable in both silk gowns and flour-dusted jeans. The bell above the bakery door jingled as he stepped in. Penny ran up with pink frosting on her cheek. "Dad, Lila said we can pick one each. You picked already," he asked. "Strawberry for me, lemon for you." "She said it looked like your kind of flavor." Lila glanced up from the counter. "I guessed again," he smiled faintly. "You seem to have a talent for it." They sat at a corner table, Penny perched between them, humming as she devoured her tart. Lila's hair was pulled back with a pencil, a smudge of flour on her sleeve. "I wanted to talk to you," she said, her voice low enough that Penny wouldn't catch the shift in tone. He straightened. "What's going on?" "I've been offered a consulting project in Paris, 6 weeks. It's a chance to restructure a failing design firm. High risk, high reward," he blinked. "That's incredible." "It is." She hesitated. "But I need to decide by Monday," he swallowed hard. "And you'd be gone that whole time." "Yes, I'd take my niece with me, my sister's on board." "But I didn't want to say yes until I talked to you." He glanced at Penny, who was now licking frosting off the paper wrapper. "You don't owe me anything, Lila, I know, but I care about what this is, about you. He rubbed his jaw. 6 weeks isn't forever. No, she said softly. But it changes things. He leaned forward. Then tell me what you want, she met his eyes. I want to see if this thing between us can work beyond borrowed suits and gala nights. I want to know if we fit in the real world. He nodded slowly. Then go, her eyes widened. What? You need to chase what you love, and if I'm part of that when you come back, then I'll be right here. She reached across the table and took his hand. You're not what I expected when this started. That makes 2 of us. There was a beat of silence, then Penny piped up. Can I go to Paris too? He laughed. Not this time, Peanut. The next morning, they met at the airport. Xavier carried Lila's niece's suitcase while she juggled boarding passes and a travel backpack. At the gate, she turned to him. I don't want to say goodbye. Then don't. Just say see you soon. I'm serious, Xavier. This isn't just a nice thing we stumbled into. You matter to me. He looked at her carefully. Then come back, and when you do, we'll figure out where this goes. She leaned in, kissed him once, and whispered, Don't get too comfortable without me. 3 weeks passed. At night, he read Penny stories on the couch. During the day, he worked longer hours at the hotel, trying to save up for small things: a new coat for Penny, a better phone with a working camera. He tried not to check his messages too often. Then, one rainy afternoon, a package arrived. He opened the box slowly. Inside were 3 things: a pair of Italian leather shoes, a handwritten note, and a plane ticket with both his and Penny's names on it. The note said, Return flight, just 1 week. Come see what it's like to meet me in the middle. He stared at the paper, then looked at Penny, who was drawing a dragon on a napkin. How do you feel about flying? She grinned. Do they have cookies on planes? He didn't hesitate. Paris was colder than he expected. Lila met them at the airport in a wool coat, her face flushed from the wind. She looked like she hadn't slept much, and when she saw him, her expression cracked open into something vulnerable and wild. You came, she said, breathless. I wasn't about to miss this. She threw her arms around him, holding on tighter than she ever had before. Over the next few days, he saw her world from the inside. Late meetings in glass-walled offices, quick lunches eaten standing up, a hotel suite with a view of the Seine and a stack of notebooks on the desk. But he also saw the pieces of her that only emerged when the work paused: her quiet laugh when she brushed powdered sugar off Penny's nose, the way she leaned her head on his shoulder during long walks, the soft way she said his name just before falling asleep. On their last night, she took him to a rooftop above the firm's headquarters. The Eiffel Tower glowed in the distance, casting gold light across the city. I used to think love had to be complicated, she said, her voice low, that it had to come with conditions and expectations. But you made it simple, he turned to her. It's never been simple for me until you. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I wasn't planning to do this now, but when have we ever followed a plan? He opened the box. Inside was a sleek silver key. I bought the building across from Penny's school, she said. There's a unit on the top floor, lots of light, a 2nd bedroom. He stared at the key, then back at her. I'm not asking you to move in tomorrow, but I am asking you to build something with me, something real. He didn't speak. Instead, he pulled her into him and kissed her hard, the wind curling around them like a promise. When they returned home, everything was different, and yet it wasn't. Penny still needed help with math homework. He still worked nights at the hotel. But now, there were mornings when Lila made pancakes in his kitchen, and evenings when they all curled up on the couch, the 3 of them wrapped in a blanket that smelled like cinnamon and new beginnings. A year later, on a warm spring day, they stood in the garden behind their new home, the one with the big windows and the lemon tree in the yard, and exchanged vows in front of a handful of friends. 2 giggling flower girls, and a judge who had to pause twice to wipe her eyes. Xavier took Lila's hands and whispered, You changed everything, she smiled. No, we changed everything together. And they did. The morning sun filtered through gauzy curtains, casting soft golden streaks across the wooden floor. Lila stood barefoot in the kitchen, whisking eggs in a ceramic bowl while Penny sat cross-legged on the counter, humming as she peeled the stickers off a banana. Xavier walked in, stretching, a towel slung over his shoulder from his shower. His hair was still damp, and he wore the faded navy t-shirt Lila liked best on him not because it was flattering, but because it was the first one he'd ever worn to her house. "You're up early," he said, taking the mug of coffee she handed him. "I have a board meeting at 10, she replied, cracking another egg, "but I wanted to make breakfast first. You've been doing all the cooking this week." Penny tapped her banana against her chin. "Does this mean we're having breakfast twice today? Because I'm not opposed," Lila laughed. "You can take the leftovers in your lunch." Xavier leaned against the counter watching them. "You're getting too used to this, kiddo." "I've always been good at adapting," Penny said seriously, then burst into giggles. After breakfast, Lila kissed them both goodbye, her heels clicking across the tile as she grabbed her coat and headed out. The front door closed with a soft thud. Penny looked up from her drawing. "She's gonna be late if she forgets her phone again." "I already slid it into her bag," Xavier said. Taking a sip of coffee, Penny nodded approvingly. "Nice." Later that afternoon, Xavier stood in the stairwell of the building just across from the school. He turned the key Lila had given him months ago and stepped into the top floor unit. The space was empty but full of light, the walls freshly painted, the hardwood floors polished to a soft sheen. He walked through the rooms slowly. The second bedroom had a corner window that overlooked the park. He could already picture Penny's desk by the window, her books stacked in colorful piles. In the living room, he opened a folder he'd brought inside were sketches he'd made for a small renovation. He'd been saving up from his shifts at the hotel and had quietly taken evening classes in basic carpentry. He'd never told Lila, not for any particular reason, just that he wanted to surprise her when the time was right. He was building their home. That evening, Lila came home late, her blazer draped over one arm, her laptop bag slung over the other. She looked tired but content. "Long day?" Xavier asked, helping her out of her coat. 3 hours of budget reviews, a surprise investor call, and a printer jam that nearly made me cry. "But other than that, perfect." He took her hand. "Come with me, I want to show you something." They left Penny with Lila's sister, who'd come for dinner, and drove the short distance to the new apartment. Lila's heels echoed softly as they stepped inside. She paused, eyes scanning the space, taking in the fresh paint, the open floor plan, the folder on the counter. "What is this?" "Our next chapter," he said. "I've been working on it, slowly. I want us to move in together. You, me, and Penny." She turned to him. "You've been doing this all on your own," he nodded. "I wanted to make something for us, not just live in something that already existed." She walked toward the windows, her fingers brushing the sill. "It's beautiful." "It's just the beginning," he said. "There's room for a kitchen island, a reading nook in the corner, and enough space on the balcony for your herbs." She laughed, turning back to him. "You remembered I kill herbs. I believe in your potential." She stepped forward and kissed him, slow and deep, her hands coming to rest on his chest. "I want to live here, with you." "Not someday soon." "Then let's start planning." They moved in 4 weeks later, after painting the bedrooms with Penny. She chose lavender for her walls and insisted on glow in the dark stars on the ceiling. Lila brought in pieces from her old home, but left most of the polished furniture behind, wanting something new, something that felt like both of them. Xavier built the bookshelves himself. She picked out a navy couch that was far too plush for practicality, but perfect for movie nights. They hosted small dinners, celebrated Penny's 6th birthday with cupcakes on the balcony, and filled the space with laughter and the quiet comfort of a life finally fitting into place. One evening, as they sat on the couch with Penny asleep inside, Lila curled against Xavier's side and looked up at him. "I never thought something so solid could come from something so unexpected." He kissed her temple. "Neither did I. You still feel like you don't belong in my world," he shook his head. "Because this is our world now, one we built together." She took his hand, threading her fingers through his. "Marry me," Xavier blinked. "What? I want to marry you," she said, eyes clear and steady. "Not because we need to. Not because of paperwork or expectations. I want to because you're the first person I've ever been completely myself with. I want to wake up next to you every day for the rest of my life." He stared at her, stunned. Then he laughed deep and warm, the kind of laugh that came from somewhere he hadn't known existed before her. "Well, if you're going to steal my thunder, I guess I don't need this anymore. He pulled a small velvet box from beneath the couch cushion and opened it. Inside was a delicate ring, simple but elegant, a vintage design with a soft sapphire in the center. Lila's eyes went wide. I was going to ask you next week, he said. I even practiced the speech. You practiced, she whispered. Every night for the last 3 days. She took the ring, slid it onto her finger, and kissed him with enough certainty to shake the world. They married the following spring in a city garden surrounded by dogwood trees in bloom. Penny carried the rings on a velvet pillow and gave a speech at the reception that made everyone cry and laugh within the same breath. Xavier wore a tailored charcoal suit, his hands steady. Lila walked down the aisle in a satin gown that shimmered like moonlight and stopped only once when she saw him, her future, waiting for her beneath the arbor. Their vows were quiet, full of truth and laughter and the kind of love that doesn't need to shout to be heard. After the first dance and the speeches and the cake, they slipped away to the rooftop of their building, just the two of them. The city stretched out beneath them, glittering, alive. This is it, he said, pulling her close. She rested her head on his shoulder. It's just the beginning. They stood there in silence, wrapped in the warmth of everything they'd built together, and in the quiet they knew. They had not fallen into love by accident, they had chosen it. Every step, every day, and they always would.